Now a few words about the enemy's propaganda operation with the imaginary, so-called results of the Kiev regime on the battlefield. And I would like to point out that both the Kiev regime itself and the so-called European imaginary peacekeepers, whose goal is not actually peace, but the continuation of the war with Russia, in their statements and practical actions confirm our assumptions about their true intentions. I would like to point out that the joint statement of some EU leaders on June 7, 2026, stated that they welcomed what they called the innovative use of unmanned aerial vehicle technology by the Kiev regime. And I have already spoken publicly about this. I said, oh well, it was of course a purely rhetorical question. Does this mean that they also mean attacks on our civilian targets, on civilian infrastructure, on transport, carrying civilians and children, on student dormitories? Does this mean that they are all encouraged to carry out these kinds of attacks? In this regard, I note that the launching of massive group strikes against the enemy country's infrastructure of military-industrial complex and the facilities that ensure its functioning, that must continue. Since these ideas are floating around, they are being realized, and we must respond accordingly. Please submit relevant proposals. There must also be a continued analysis of the involvement of each instigator in continuing the war. An analysis of the involvement of each of them in actual combat operations must be carried out. We need this analysis to be able to make responsible decisions in the future. In any case, we might need it. Now, regarding the enemy's supposed successes on the battlefield, we must, firstly, bear in mind that, in order to support their lies and false claims, the enemy may undertake certain sabotage and illegal actions and undertake forays. Although with small forces, but with great propaganda, in order to confirm their theses about imaginary achievements. We must be prepared for these possible forays. And secondly, the bad statements by the leaders of the Kiev regime about successes that, in fact, we know, they do not exist, are in principle to our advantage. Since these are just ideas, and they don't really know how to do anything else, they weren't taught anything else. But with their actions and statements, they certainly disorganize both themselves and their sponsors. I repeat, this is to our advantage, and commanders of the Russian armed forces must act rhythmically and rationally to consistently overcome them. Of course, the difficulties that are being faced in these conditions, everything necessary must be done to possibly save the lives of our soldiers, to ensure the unconditional fulfillment of tasks in strict accordance with the plan of the special military operation developed by the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces.